There's a lot of confusion on the internet about the different rune rows, how they relate to each other, and where they fit into a timeline. So in this video, I want to clear some of that confusion up, and I want to make a few specific points. The first point I want to make is that during the Viking Age, the Norse spoke Old Norse, and this was written using Younger Futhark, not Elder Futhark. Elder Futhark wrote Proto-Norse, a previous stage of Norse, and Elder Futhark also wrote other related Germanic dialects and languages. So if you're trying to have an inscription which is supposed to be reminiscent of the Viking Age and you're trying to write it in Old Norse, you would not use Elder Futhark if you're trying to be authentic like. The next point is that a lot of Norse mythology wasn't recorded during the Viking Age. It was recorded a little bit afterwards around here. And by this time period, the Norse had either switched over to using the Latin script or the Younger Futhark rune row had turned into the Futhark medieval rune row. So sometimes it might be more appropriate to use Futhark if you're trying to write an Old Norse inscription which is full of a bunch of Norse mythological terms, because a lot of those terms show up around here and they don't first show up around here. It's understandable that some people who are trying to have a heathen theme in an inscription wouldn't want to use a rune row from after the Norse were pretty heavily Christianized. So yeah, there's that. This leads into another point of mine. If you look at the timeline, you can see the English were Christianized somewhere around here, and the Norse were Christianized somewhere around here. But you can see they're not giving up runes. The English kept using the Futhark rune row, and the Norse kept using runes for a very long time. This isn't even the end point. This is just kind of where I decided to mark that runes are pretty much fallen out of everyday use. The point I'm getting at is that this idea that runes were seen as being heathen and then shunned by people, this isn't really supported by the evidence. This seems to be a modern misconception. The only people who seem to have given up runes shortly after conversion might be the Goths, and even then the timeline might not even really allow for that. And even if the Goths did give up their runes and switch over to their newly invented Gothic alphabet shortly after conversion, this could easily be explained by the Goths trying to join in the Greco-Roman culture because it was prestigious. If you look at the Gothic alphabet, it's very Greek-like. It's obviously based heavily on Greek. So that may have been a cultural shift and not a religious shift. Something worth mentioning is that the names of the Elder Futhark runes are not directly attested. Instead, what we have are manuscripts that seem to show the names of the Gothic letters, and then manuscripts which do show names for the Futhark runes and names for the Younger Futhark runes. And then people compare the correspondences between these names, and then they use that to make guesses about the Elder Futhark rune names. Now I'm going to talk about how runes relate to the development of Germanic languages. So apparently not even the earliest known runic artifacts are classified as having Proto-Germanic written on them, because apparently even this early on, this far back, Proto-Germanic has split, I guess, roughly into East Germanic languages and then not East Germanic languages. The not East Germanic languages would later give rise to the North Germanic languages and the West Germanic languages. So some people like to think of this as being a northwest branch, although that apparently has some implications that some linguists don't like. But whatever the case, one of the takeaways here is that you should be skeptical when people throw around the term Proto-Norse around this time period, because apparently there just aren't enough distinguishing features to make that call. By 500, the North and West Germanic languages definitely have split, and you can tell them apart. The Frisians and English, or rather Anglo-Saxons, are using their own offshoot of Elder Futhark by this point, although there are still West Germanic speakers, for example in southern Germany, who are still using Elder Futhark. I should probably point this out, that the distinguishing features here are subtle. It's not like, at one point someone just said, hey, I'm tired of Elder Futhark, let's invent a new rune row. These are very small changes, and so really these should be gradients to get that point across, but yeah. I would go into more detail about the development of Germanic languages, but I don't really know a lot about it, so I think I'll stop the video here before I say a whole bunch of inaccurate stuff if I haven't already.